They tell me that the church is old-fashioned, outdated, a relic. They tell me that faith is for those stuck in the past. But you know, it's funny. I've read this old book, and every time God shows up, he does something new. Well, I have to apologize for my appearance. I know I don't look very clergy-like today, but I just couldn't bring myself to wear black on Easter Sunday. It's such a joyous occasion. But I promise you next Sunday I'll look more like a minister once again. I don't know if you've heard of this fad called the internet. On this fad called the internet, they have these things called memes. Memes are just funny little pictures. And one of my favorites is a genre of meme called "You Had One Job." I'm going to give you an example. That situation where you just had one job, man, and you messed it up. You let us down. I'll give you a couple more. 5 bananas. No wonder my kids can't count. Anyone need an English tutor? I don't know which is worse, if it's just ironic they can't spell tutor, or if it's an English tutor. Please pay for your parking fee before existing. You had one job, just spell check that. And this one's my favorite. He said his name was Mark with a C. Oh dear, oh dear. You had one job and you let us all down, but with hilarious results, so it's okay. I have a question for you. Have you ever let somebody down? While I enjoy these memes, I've let people down in my life before. Maybe you have too. And it's just awful. It's awful. And that's why when my kids do something wrong, I don't yell at them. I just say something like, "You know what, son? I'm really disappointed." That's emotional warfare. That's what that is. If you've ever let someone down in your life, you know just how awful it feels to disappoint somebody. Now, the nice thing is, for you and for me, when we make a mistake, when we let somebody down, it's not recorded in the best-selling book of all time, like it is for today, for today's man that I want to talk about. His name was Peter. You probably heard of him. He was supposed to be the chief of all of Jesus' disciples. He was supposed to be his right-hand man. He was the one who declared, "Even if I have to die with you, Jesus, I will never disown you." But he would. And Jesus knew it. We read in Matthew 26:33-34, Peter goes further. He says, "I tell you that," he says, "even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." Oh, Jesus says, "I tell you the truth, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Well, I'd like to back up a little bit and take you to the moment that this happens. This is the moment where they seize Jesus, they lead him away, they take him to the house of the high priest, and they want to have a little bit of a mock trial. Peter follows at a distance, but when they kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard, he sat down. He wanted to be close, but not too close, so he sat with them around a fire. Now, a servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and she said, "This man here, this man has been with Jesus." And of course, he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him." A little later, someone saw him and said, You're you're one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. An hour later, "Certainly this fellow was with him. He's a Galilean." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." And of course, you know what happens. Just as he says that, a rooster crows. But I don't know if you've kept reading. The Lord turned at that moment, and he locked eyes with Peter. Peter remembered the word that the Lord had spoken to him. And Peter went outside, and he wept bitterly. Now, after this encounter, you don't hear a lot more about Peter. Did you ever notice that? He sort of disappears from the rest of the story. Everyone scampers off into the safety of the night except for John and a bunch of women named Mary. And it's an interesting phenomenon that Peter just seems to be absent from the rest of the story. Now, a few days later, Jesus is dead, and he's been buried. The disciples are in hiding for their lives when one of those Marys we mentioned bursts into the room. She drops a bomb. She says, "Jesus is missing." They've taken him out of the tomb, she says. "We don't know where they've put him. He's gone." Where is he gone? Well, we continue with the story. John tells us that he and Peter ran at once for the tomb. He also brags that he's faster than Peter, which it's his book, it's his prerogative. He got there first, but John didn't go in. Let's pick it up in verse 6. Simon Peter, who again was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen laying there as well as the burial cloth around Jesus' head. And as he looks in, he notices it's like it's been taken off leisurely, like with no hurry, nicely folded, nicely set aside. Everyone went back to their homes, and everybody didn't understand that Jesus had to rise from the dead. They went back to their homes. Now, the rest of the story in John is a bunch of different divine encounters with Jesus. Jesus keeps appearing to people, but he rarely appears to Peter. In fact, Peter doesn't show up at all. In fact, it's kind of weird, if you ask me. When Mary bursts into the room and she says, "I've seen the risen Lord," where's Peter running out to find him, to fall at his feet, and to say, "I'm so sorry I denied you 3 times"? Where's Peter? Not long after that, Jesus appears in a locked room. He speaks with the disciples. Still, no Peter. John even notes that there was one who was missing. Do you remember who was missing? His name was Thomas. Thomas wasn't there when Jesus showed up. Thomas says, "I'm highly skeptical that a man died and came back to life. That just doesn't happen. Unless I see the nail marks, unless I see the scars, I'm not going to believe." And John's clear to let us know about doubting Thomas. But of course, later on, Jesus appears. "Put your finger here. See my hands. See all of this." And Thomas saw. He said, "My Lord and my God." And still, no Peter. Where's Peter? Can I venture a guess? Peter's still at home. Peter is still at home. He's put his ringer on silent. He's drawn the curtains. He's not answering the door because Peter is a failure. He's a disappointment. He was supposed to be the rock upon which Jesus would build his church. But instead, Peter would always be known as the one who not only did not stand up for Jesus, as he once loudly boasted he would do, but denied him 3 times. I would not be very surprised if there isn't somebody here today who can relate. Not that you've disowned the Son of God 3 times around a fire at his arrest and trial, but maybe you carry a deep shame. Maybe you've messed something up in your life, big time. Maybe you've let down somebody important in your life. Maybe you've let yourself down. One of the reasons that I love Peter is he's so relatable. I can relate to Peter. One minute, he's just boasting his superior allegiance, and the next, he's denying that he even knows Jesus to a servant girl of absolutely no consequence. One minute, he's the Lord's right-hand man, and the next minute, he's just gone. He's gone home. Kind of reminds me of this friend I had in ministry a while back. And this friend of mine had an amazing gift for sharing Jesus. He just had this way about him for communicating God's truth. And he led more people to the Lord than I ever have. One day, he just quit. He quit, he moved. He stopped talking about Jesus. We never saw him again. And it wasn't that he stopped believing, it's that his marriage fell apart. And when his marriage fell apart, he felt like he had somehow let God down. And he felt, if I've let God down, I can no longer represent him. I can no longer minister in his name. So he quit. He went home. He felt he no longer had a right to minister in God's name. And I can tell you that is absolutely not true. Believe me. Now, Peter is a great example of this. You see, the amazing thing about God is that while God loves us for who we are, he never leaves us as we are. He loves you for who you are, but he has plans for you. And he had plans for Peter. His love for Peter was too great to allow him to wallow in overwhelming shame. I want to check out John 21. Afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. This is after all kinds of appearances where Peter is not present. It happened this way, John says. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, 2 other disciples who for some reason don't earn a name. They go out to fish. They go back to doing what they've always done. Simon said, I'm going to go fish. We'll go with you. So they went out, they got into the boat. They didn't catch anything. Now, early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples didn't realize it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? No, they said. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And after this happened, they took a closer look at that figure. Who is this guy? How does he know? And they realized the disciple whom Jesus loved, John, the fastest disciple, said to Peter, I know who that is. I know who that is. It's the Lord. Well, as soon as Simon Peter, oh wait, you know what? We need to hold up here because I want to ask you this. What do you think Peter's response is going to be? What do you think his You've heard the story, but I'll tell you, if I was Peter, I know what my response would be. I'd be tempted to start rowing in the opposite direction, wouldn't you? I'd be tempted perhaps to lash out, if not run away? You see, when we let people down in our lives, it's hard to face up to it. We either run away or we guard ourselves with anger. But not Peter. Here's what Peter does. Let's go back. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he'd taken it off. He jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire burning. They saw coals with fish on it. They saw some bread. Jesus had prepared them a meal. You might remember the last time they were all together, they also enjoyed a meal, which we call the Last Supper. Simon Peter climbed aboard. He dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish. They counted them, 153. Two of the disciples don't get names, but we know how many fish were there. Jesus said to them, "Come and eat. Come and eat." And then none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. Now, this might sound familiar to you. Jesus took bread, probably gave thanks for it, passed it to them, and then he did so with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. But this is the first time that Peter's name is mentioned in any of these encounters. And all eyes, they must have been on him. I mean, what was going to happen? What would Jesus say? What would Peter say? If this were a 1980s sitcom, they'd cut to commercial break. To be continued. Well, here's what happened. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Well, Jesus said, "Feed my sheep, feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter, he's hurt. He's hurt because Jesus questioned him 3 times. Don't you believe I love you, Lord? "Lord," Peter says, "you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus looks at Peter and he says, "Then feed my sheep." 3 times Peter denied Jesus. 3 times. 3 times Jesus questions his love. But more importantly, 3 times Jesus commissions the downtrodden disciple. Feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. Now, to be clear, Jesus doesn't actually own any livestock. He was a traveling preacher, the son of a carpenter. In fact, when he died, they cast lots to disperse all of his worldly possessions. But like his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather before him, Jesus was in fact a shepherd, the good shepherd, actually, the one who protects the weak, the one who seeks and saves the lost, the one who said, "I am the good shepherd," and the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. And in this very moment, and maybe some of you here today can relate, Peter was lost. He needed to be found. I think it's as if Jesus is saying, "I know you've let me down, Peter. I know you've denied me 3 times. I know that things didn't go the way that you expected. But I'm entrusting you right now, Peter, with my very most important thing in this entire world. I know things didn't go the way you thought they would, but what matters is that right here today, I stand in front of you with a calling. I'm entrusting you with my most favorite possession in this world, my people, the lost sheep of Israel. I know you've let me down in the past, but I'm betting on you one more time, Peter. Look after my prized possession. Peter, if you love me, and I know you do, look after my sheep. Love them, care for them, nurture them when I'm gone. 3 times you betrayed me around a fire, and 3 times I now commission you, Peter, around a fire. If you love me, as I know you do, feed my sheep. And you know, he would. Peter would go on to be a pillar of the church. He would live up to his name, the Rock. And one day, he would give up his life rather than betray the name of his Lord, his master, and his friend. Now, I wanted to share this particular story with you today because I suspect that there might be some here, and maybe even some watching at home, that need to know that no matter what you have done, no matter how you have failed, no matter what has happened in your past, today is a new day. In fact, it's not just any day. Today is Easter Sunday. And on Easter Sunday, Jesus rose from the dead. On Easter Sunday, Jesus overturned Adam's curse. He vanquished death. He overcame the powers of darkness. He defied all expectation. In short, he showed us that nothing can stop the power of the love of God. Not Rome, not Israel, not Satan, not us, not even death. You see, church, the God we worship is a God of redemption. He is the good shepherd who seeks and saves the lost. The God we worship is the God of new life, new beginnings, new opportunities. The question is, will you take it? Will you receive it? Will you receive the unconditional love and the grace that Jesus offers? Or will you let shame or doubt or fear stand in the way of something new? The Apostle Paul, who himself was a man who knew what it was like to be forgiven much, said, if anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. Church, Easter Sunday is a day for new beginnings. I pray that we're all open to what God has in store for us, because on this day of all days, I declare to you that it is time for something new.